Welcome to Timberborn and the settlement of the Skyborn. My name is Zedek, and my goal is to transform this entire map into a skyscraper city. If you're new to the channel, we're pretty early in this process, and I've got an established colony of about 100 beavers and kind of the beginnings of an economy to do this. There are a couple things that are holding us back though. First, the terrain. The terrain on this map, the ancient Causeway, is really broken up and rocky, and it makes it really difficult to start building large structures. And the second is really our industry. To start building skyscrapers, we need a lot of planks, a lot of metal, and a lot of power. And our current industry just quite isn't there yet. So that's what I want to tackle in this episode. I want to start taming some of this land and start really booming our economy. And if we're lucky, maybe we can start building something. Of those things, I think the first thing I want to look at is our industry. So I've got the industry split between kind of two zones. This one over by the badwater and this one near our original start of our colony. I think I want to start expanding the industry down by the badwater first. And that's because I have a plan here. You see, I've been saving up for some metal. And when I have that metal saved up, I want to make a badwater dome over on this source right here, so we can start having a perpetual source of power. Now, I've got some water wheels here that are just kind of breaking even with our power demand that we've got. But I've got these other sources over here. I think what I want to do is kind of expand this power plant a bit. And then we can figure out maybe how to fit more buildings in here. Now, long term, I'm going to build a much more sophisticated power plant all through here. This is just something to get us going so that we can start getting more metal coming in, and then we can probably approach that later. Now for this setup, I'm going to continue the zigzag pattern. So what you see here is this water from this aqueduct is coming down, wrapping around, and coming through here. Then I've got these two sources coming in this route. What I would like to do is start forcing a next run in this direction, and then curving back. That should get us a little bit more power. I really wish I had dirt to fill in that little hole there, but we don't yet have a dirt excavator because we're still waiting on treated planks, which we can't expand because we don't have the power. Okay, so we'll get that first round going, and I think I need to start directing some more water in that direction. Let's see. I'm going to preemptively start dynamiting away some of this dirt here, so we have more space to work with. Maybe we can make this zigzag longer. And longer term, I would like to try to reclaim this mine. So maybe I can start boxing part of it off. Now that will take a little bit to build, but I need places to actually add the extended industry. What I'm thinking, since this is the Skyborn, ultimately I'm going to start building up, and I'll make maybe another layer on top of these buildings. The only catch is this takes metal, and I'm really saving up our metal to get that badwater dome. That's the next thing I'm going to purchase. So I'm going to preemptively make the power, but then we're going to come back later in this episode and then maybe make the next layer on this facility when we can actually afford it. In the meantime though, let's talk about the other problem I want to solve, this gnarly terrain. We do have a lot of dynamite that we've slowly been stockpiling, as well as some extract. I think we could go around and start finding messed up terrain on this map and starting to try to flatten it. This is going to be a long process for us. For example, we've got some space over here that would be really good farmland. So I'm just going to have this be another background task for all these beavers. We're just going to slowly eat away at this space. And wherever possible, I do like to try to cut down some of these leftover trees just so they're not completely wasted. I could just tear them out and be done with it, but I do like to use what building materials I can. That's some dynamite there. I also want to look at dynamite here. This little corner of the map is really annoying. You can see, look at this space here, and it's really not super productive. You can see I've got a tunnel there. I've got all this terrain with one-off blocks. It would be nice to get some crews in here and starting to flatten some of this stuff up. And I'm just going to continue going around the map and just starting to lay down dynamite in all these nooks and crannies so I can get flat space. I do find this map particularly challenging in this way. Compared to some of the prefab maps that come with the game, the terrain here is just really broken up, which is good. I like the challenge. It is definitely a change of pace from everything just being kind of perfect. I'm not going to dynamite all the terrain flat. I think some of it, most of it probably will be because we're building a city. I do want some of that in here, but I will probably keep some traces of the original city. For example, some of this mountain I'm probably going to keep in some way, and I'm definitely going to keep this giant aqueduct. I think that's a big defining feature of this map, and I'm going to make that kind of a centerpiece of the city once we create it. But I'm not really that attached to all these other things. Yeah, for example, this mountain here, or this pit here, I think that's fair game to eventually be removed from this map. Okay, I think that is enough TNT for now. We've only got about 300 of it, so we can't start doing massive demolition works just yet. So we'll leave it for there. Now, you'll notice this other thing that I've got going on in the middle of the map that's in the build queue. This is a leftover project from last episode. Last episode, I started to build an actual dam for our beavers because we're starting to run out of water for droughts. And there's not a lot of natural, places to store water in this map, considering it's so flat. I mean, maybe you could do something over here. So I built this giant structure in the middle after kind of flattening, very expensively, a big chunk of land. Now, the only problem I've got with this dam is you'll notice that I've got holes in it. You see, I want to get it up to here, but I have this gap because of the overhangs. So I'm building as much of the dam as I can, and then I'm kind of waiting for a nice drought. And then I'm going to have to kind of tear apart these built-in natural overhangs and replace them with shorter, regular overhangs. So all that said, I've got a lot in the build queue right now. I've got the TNT that we just went around, I've got the rest of this dam, and I've got our power supply. I want some of this build queue to clear up first before I start going any further. Because I have this bad tendency to basically spend all my metal blocks, and if I keep spending them, I'm never going to be able to afford this dome. So let's just give a little bit of time to pass, and then we can start reevaluating. Well, that's the power plant more or less done. Let's take a look. How much power are these wheels generating? That wheel alone, unconnected everything, is now up to 300 horsepower. Yeah, so once this is all connected, that's going to be a good boost. You can see this one already is, and it's already giving this whole entire network up to 2,000 horsepower. So pretty good setup here. Now, you'll also notice a trick I used to speed this up. If you've seen some of my other videos, something I normally do is I put down a warehouse nearby so that builders can go get them for resources. Recently, this playthrough, instead of putting down like giant industrial piles for supplies, I've been tinkering with small industrial piles prioritized by haulers, and I find that works fairly well for construction like this. They're cheap to place down, and it really does speed up construction. And then I can just tear it out when I'm done. Now, beyond that, let's take a look at our TNT that's been placed. How are we doing there? Well, we've got this one. Go ahead and detonate that. Let's go check our other spots. Well, we've got this under construction. It looks like as they finish working on the power plants, this is the next thing in the queue. So I'm going to guess the other places they haven't reached yet. Well, I think given that we still are waiting on a little bit of metal anyways, I'm just going to time-lapse some of this stuff too. Well, it looks like we've got a good chunk of this dynamite done. And it looks like we're also due for a bad tide just in the morning. Now, unfortunately, I was really hoping for a regular drought so I could get in here and start to fix up this dam. But, a regular bad tide will do. It shouldn't affect us too much. We've got everything else stockpiled. But other than that, I think we've done a good job getting through some of our first round of things. And what I am really excited about is it looks like, as we've been laying that dynamite, we've inched up to almost 200 metal blocks, which should be enough for badwater discharge. As soon as that dynamite finishes, I think I'm going to queue this up. We should be able to put something down here, and that will give us control. Now, it doesn't really matter for a bad tide, so I'll put it down there, but we may not actually start constructing it just yet. But that is going to let this power plant, keep running. And then with all that power plant, we can start building our industry up again. And let's see, here comes the bad tide. Let's see, how long are we in for? 3 days, not a problem. I always like seeing the badwater diversion system kick in. It's so nice when you don't have to do anything and it just works. Actually, hopefully that's not going to cause any flooding for us down here. And this is actually revealing another problem I kind of messed up with this tree farm here. So you can see that these trees die over here. So I think what it is it's because this aqueduct right here is built on dirt for kind of its pylons. And that allows the bad water to contaminate the dirt down here. It's kind of interesting where it affects and where it doesn't. For example, you notice it doesn't affect over here, which is kind of curious. And it doesn't affect or seem to be affecting here. I wonder if natural overhangs don't transmit the contamination, because I would expect them to go through. But these trees at the base, they're fine. Versus over here, this looks like it's regular dirt. Okay, that's good to know, because that may affect some of the things we build later. Well, how are we doing over here? Do we have any overflow? No, no, it's looking good. And how much power are they generating? Total power supply of 1200. It's okay. I was kind of hoping for more. Not sure why these guys are so slow. Part of what's slowing it down is I have these kind of emergency release valve floodgates here. The idea is that if this is ever looking like it's going to overflow, they've got water being triggered. So they are actually fairly close to overflowing. So I'm glad I've got them there, but they are probably eating away with some of the power that could be going through these guys. Which, as I peek up over here, it looks like somehow we did manage to get a contaminated beaver. Makes me wonder if there was some temporary overflowing in here when we weren't looking. Well, you know, I wonder, can we do anything about that now? What do we have? A decontamination pod. We have all of those supplies, because I think it just needs extract to keep it running, which we've got. Is there anything in here where we have a little room for just this little structure? Well, maybe down here. We just need enough for one beaver. This should all be connected to that power grid, and this little engine can hopefully keep it running. You know, as I'm jumping around, let's make sure that we actually have a route to build that badwater dome in the background. Doesn't look like I quite have all the connections I need. And you can see from a prior episode, I actually built these stockpiles here with the idea of speeding up this construction. So I've got some metal blocks, gears, explosives, all kind of primed to go. And it's not enough to afford it all outright, but they should be manned by haulers that can keep on replenishing it for the builders. Other than that, I think maybe we're ready to start triggering some of this dynamite. Start getting back some of this space. And you know, I'm pleasantly surprised that it didn't take as much dynamite as I was hoping. You know, for all that stuff that we laid down, we still have 146 dynamite. So I'm liking that sign, because that means that we can keep on queuing up more dynamite work in the background of this episode. It just makes it more and more flat land to work with. But we can go ahead and trigger the areas that we've got. Well, I'm liking that. Look at all that nice green space. I wasn't 100% confident that this would be fully irrigated, but I guess it's just within range. I have a feeling this will not be fully irrigated when we get it down, but we can figure that out when we get there. But at the very least, I can probably queue up some more dynamite in here. Let's go check on some of those other spots. What else are we looking at? Well, this will be great for additional farmland. Not that we exactly need it, since we've got a full supply of corn rations, but we might as well trigger it. What else do we have? Well, this one, I think we just need a few more sticks of dynamite to be placed, so we'll come back here in a second. What do we got over here? Well, this area, I think, unfortunately, is going to need a couple rounds to go. So we'll trigger what we can, and then I'm going to lay down another set. Now, I'm going to be careful here, because I have a feeling that some of this lip on this dynamite is actually limiting the spread of this contamination. And I think what it is every block of vertical space reduces the range of contamination. So you'll notice over here, there's no lip or no upward block, and this contamination goes roughly 6 blocks. Whereas over here, it's only going 2. So if I fully get rid of this lip, it's going to kill all these trees here. And as I mentioned that, I look up over here, and we are seeing additional contamination here that I missed. And if we kind of look above, it does look like it's like you can see the dead space that's circling it. That looks like it is surrounding the dirt pylons. So I've got this dead space in here and this dead space here, but it looks like there's no circle coming from here. So that is a good sign that our earlier assumption was correct. I don't think this natural overhang, you know, block down in here is transmitting the contamination, but I do think the regular soil is. So that's going to be annoying long term, because it really kind of ruins the center of the map unless we can kind of figure a way to surround that water source, maybe with levees later on. But with that queued up, let's continue with some of our dynamiting. Well, this area is another particularly nasty area. We'll trigger all of it and place in yet another round, as well as the same for this mountain over here. And it looks like we managed to finish up over here too, so we might as well trigger that. You know, I'm honestly pretty impressed with how quickly we've been able to start terraforming this map. If you've seen some of my prior series, one of them I actually converted a whole mountain into a city. And that thing took like multiple episodes of just dynamiting. One of the nice things on this map is it's not very tall. Like other than this kind of hill over here, there's not really a lot of deep, mountains. So really these hills are coming out pretty quick. I know I've been using time lapses and other things here, but really it's only been one cycle since I've started recording. Well, I've got some of this going in the background. I don't want to fill in some of this green space just yet. I want to start maybe planning some of this out for some future towers. Let's go check back over here. How are we doing on the dome? Well, it looks like they can finally reach it. They're just not working on it because it's low priority. So maybe let's start changing that. And what else are we doing here? You know, the other thing I'm kind of eyeing is a more reliable source of metal. Because as soon as we're just going to burn through these metal blocks really quickly. So that's going to be really treated planks. And I think we need maybe... How many treated planks? I think 300. Yeah, we're going to need 300 treated planks for an efficient mine. So that'll probably be something we'll be able to get to later in this episode. Let's go check how our mining operations are doing, though. How are we doing here? Well, fairly good. I think there's still a decent amount of scrap to be had in there. And, there's still pockets here and there we could raid, as well as, this big giant thing over here. We could probably get some scrappers up there with a few, strategically placed stairs. But I think we have all the supplies we need for this badwater discharge, so hopefully the construction of this should go pretty quick. And really, once that is fully built, I'm going to feel a lot better about using up my metal, because I've been kind of holding off on any of my platforms. Because what I think will be next is starting to make this area multidimensional. We're going to start building this upward, and that's going to be something to figure out. Well, I'm thinking I could basically make a whole new story. I'm going to probably splurge for the really expensive overhangs. But what I could probably do is something like this. I'm going to have to go up fairly high here. But if I'm somewhere like that and I have these overhangs, that could be the next story. And then I could repeat the same process over the water wheels and get another story here. I don't want to spend anything yet that's going to require metal. So let's at least start spending on the platforms. We can get those ready. Unfortunately, this is going to be really much of a pain to build, because I don't have a good way of actually getting to the second story. I know there's been a lot of suggestions in the comments to use the ladder mod. I might cave in and do that at a certain point. I don't know, I'll run a poll. I know some people really like a vanilla playthrough, some people like mods, but in a vertical map like this, the ladder mod would probably really help me out. You know what I could probably do once it comes time to build this? I could probably just cut a line through here and have them work their way down. Let's try that. I could probably make a bridge and have them build the first kind of platform and then get down that way. But then I'll have to figure out kind of a longer term stairwell to get to the workspace on the second floor. But yeah, we can just pull out all of that stuff. And you're probably wondering why I'm even making this upward. Like, why bother? I just finished dynamiting all this green space. Why don't I just use something here? Well, it's because a lot of this construction is temporary. Ultimately this is going to be a giant city. And really, I'm constrained by what I can pull off right now because of my industry. So all this buildings in here, they're probably going to be torn out at some point. Except for probably some remnant over here. I'm going to call this part Old Town, and I'll probably keep a reminder of how the colony started. But really, I'm kind of saving or earmarking a lot of these spaces for towers that are going to go in. And so I don't want to put other temporary things I'm going to have to tear out. I'm going to try to corral or keep our temporary industry kind of in here. And then eventually we're going to have new towers that are going to be much more futuristic, much more, complicated, or however you want to describe it, over in other parts of the map. And then eventually we can probably decommission some of these buildings. And, well, it looks like it's only going to take a couple of days to finish off this badwater discharge, which is good because I'd rather get these builders on something else. Even though this is really expensive, it goes super quick since we have all the ingredients ready to go. In fact, I think we just need a single builder up here to do the final touches. Well, there he is. He's going to finish the last 10%. Let's say Pina. Your new name is Bob. Bob the Builder. You seem to be doing the most important work here. Ooh, and there we are. Let's see, does it start closed? It does. Well, we do want that power for now. Okay, that's going to be a nice, reliable source. With those builders freed up, what do we have? We have 33 metal blocks left. Not a ton, but it's probably enough to get them started with over here. So let's pull out the debris, and we can probably start with, I don't know, a regular bridge hanging over the edge should be good enough to get going. Oh, that's interesting. With this cleared out, I didn't realize those were exactly the right height I needed. So I could probably just make a bridge right here and they can work their way across. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do one better. The problem with doing that is they'd have to build each of these, you know, one after the other. If I build kind of one bridge hanging over a very long distance, that should let them build 4 or 5 of these in parallel. Let's go with that. Even with this bridge, though, I have a feeling this is going to be a slow process, just because we just spent all of our metal. So it's going to take a little bit to refine more. In fact, I'm actually kind of noticing that our metal refinery down here isn't doing anything. Why is that? No available workers. Well, it should probably be our highest priority. That kind of does point out something else we should work on. We've got tons of food. We've got tons of water. We should start increasing our population again. I think we just recently had a bunch of beavers die off and a new set come in, but I think we should start building more breeding pods. Now, one of the restrictions that I've put on myself for this playthrough is that given it's the Skyborn, the beavers do have to be born in the sky. So you'll notice all of my breeding pods right now are in some way elevated. I've got these guys hanging over the farmland, and I have all of these guys on a bridge over the water. So I'd like to continue that trend. I'm wondering if I could make a tower that is dedicated just to the breeding pods, though. Because right now I'm kind of just putting them here and there. But one really tall tower might be kind of cool. I'm wondering if this is an opportunity to play with some of the new stuff from Update 7. I haven't been using subway tubes at all in this playthrough, but I think they really unlock some options for going vertical. So what I want to toy around with is making almost like a single pylon going straight up vertically into the sky and then building some sort of like breeding pod zone right on top. And I'm wondering if I could pull it off somewhere over here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just relocate those beavers up into another round of housing up over here. And this, unfortunately, is starting to get very high and more inefficient. But we have some options for that I'm going to get to in a second. For the actual breeding pod zone, here's what I had in mind. I have enough room that I could put a subway station here. And that gives me enough space that I could then build something vertically. My understanding of two-ways is that the beavers can build the layer above them while they're in the tube. Now, before I go straight up vertically, though, one thing I'm going to do is destroy or replace this piece with another two-way, solid two-way. That gives me the option of sometime in the future coming through here and maybe making another underground or hidden access point that connects us to something else. So let's say that I took this up here. Well, beavers can build one above them in the two-way, so that's good. But this on its own doesn't do me anything. Like, once they're up here, they can't get out of it. So what I'm thinking instead is I could build, platforms or levees. Levees are expensive here, but I kind of want the decoration. But the idea is that I could use that to kind of build some scaffolding up here at whatever height that I want. And then from this height, I should be able to start, building some set of structure that could be used for platforms. So this is just kind of a rough draft. We can imagine something like this, with some space in there. And now all of a sudden I've got a nice high platform. I could take this up here, straighten out some of this, put down a subway station, and maybe even, since this is so close to this other area over here, I may be able to connect these lines if I do it right. Oh, actually that one worked out quite well. But you can imagine that I could have some two-way station up here, and then kind of a road over there to give kind of the beavers easier access to the higher range of the skyscraper. I think with this design, I should have enough space in here that I can get something for these last little bits. Yeah, just like that. Now, the question is, can the beavers actually build all of this from within the tube-way? I think so, because they can build adjacent to them. So I think they should be able to build everything up to here, no problem. To build this wide enough, yeah, they should be able to build all three of these side by side, which give me space to put down a platform right there, a station right there. And then once all of that is done, I'm thinking I could just line a bunch of these all the way around the perimeter. Come up with some pattern for it. I'm just going to go through here and make sure everything is aligned, but otherwise I think this is good. Okay, I think this abomination is going to work. I'm really just experimenting here. I want to see what I can pull off with this new stuff from Update 7. Now, unfortunately, this is going to take a lot of metal. I'll probably deprioritize some of this. I know it would be nice to have those additional beavers, but I do want to kind of expand our metal production first, which should make some of this go faster. So I don't want to rush it too quickly. Speaking of our metal, let's go take a peek to see how it's doing. Well, unfortunately, not too much progress here. What's going on? Well, I think they can reach everything. I wonder why it's being slowed down. Well, I'm going to use a trick and just watch one of our builders and see what they're up to. Where are you going? Oh, they're still building some of the TNT. Well, that explains that. Well, let's see. I think I can just make some of this a lower priority. They don't need to do all of this right now. Okay, let's follow a builder now. Where is he off to? Ah, there we go. Now they're starting construction. So we need to figure out two things here. One, we need power up here for the buildings. And two, we're going to need some way for the workers to get up here, which ideally doesn't involve climbing all the way up to this aqueduct and clambering over this bridge. Well, for the power, we can probably manage some upward power shaft in here without, too much difficulty. I think we just need to put it near the end so that we're not interrupting our platforms. So let's say we extended the platform somewhat like that, and maybe we can imagine the power would just come up through this last run up here. Okay, that gives us power over in that last corner. The other thing I'm wondering is if I should extend this platform over here just a little bit to make it so it's flush with the edge of this aqueduct. I think I could pull that off pretty cheaply here if I just used another set of overhangs. And then, yeah, that should work just like that. Now we've got a really nice flush foundation. Now to figure out where to put those stairs. Well, I'm going to go with the straightforward approach. I'm just going to delete some of these piles over here. We still have all the resources, so we'll get those back. But what I'm thinking is I could just make kind of a staggered stairwell all the way up here. In fact, we could probably get rid of this stairwell, which we don't really need anymore. And the reason I'm making this stairway staggered is I'm hoping that I can take advantage of this stairwell to have storage bins on the side, multiple layers, just for all this intermediate stuff. Well, that's shaping up. Now we need to figure out how we're actually going to lay out the buildings here. And this part's going to be a little messy. I know one of the things I could do that I've done in other playthroughs is I've made like a subfloor. If you can imagine something like this. And I run power through here and I can bring it up to the buildings up top. I don't think we're rich enough to do that yet, frankly. Maybe later when we're doing some of our more complex builds, but I wonder if I can just square everything in here in a nice compact way. All right, I think this is going to work. It's going to be very dense, but I think I've got everything in here. Hopefully we've got enough power to power it all. So just doing some quick ballpark math, I think we're going to have enough. Kind of the most unusual part of this construction is probably this solution to allowing stackable power. You can see I've got the power going up, and I want to splice off of this to power this floor, but I still want the option to continue going higher afterwards. So I kind of jut off at this floor, have a junction, and then loop back and keep going up. I kind of wanted the option to replicate this floor a second time in case we want to keep going up. So you'll notice that anywhere I had platforms the first time, I've kind of left that open so I could continue building platforms for the next story. I don't know if this is going to continue to be kind of a warehouse skyscraper, but maybe. We'll see. And it looks like as I finish this plan, we just are about to enter into a bad tide. At 5 days, so they are inching up. Unfortunately, this is going to set us back. We'll lose a few trees in here, but we still have full pine resin anyways. At this point, though, I don't want to continue building too much. I've got too much in the queue already. And I think I want to just try to flush out as much of this build queue as I can. Kind of the order that I'm thinking is I really want to push getting our manufacturing done first, because it'll give us more metal coming through. Then after that, I want to start building our maternity ward or our breeding pod ward. And after that, probably finishing out some of that blasting. So maybe this is worth a quick time lapse just to get some of this stuff through. I have a feeling it might take about a cycle, but maybe we'll get lucky. Well, it looks like it was slower than I was expecting. It took about one whole cycle to get to this point. And you can see what I've been trying to do is push planks and metal first. Those are our two things that we're really limited by. That's really where our bottleneck is right now. As the beavers were building this, I did notice a couple things. The first is I think I can get a little bit more space in here with a very minor amount of rearranging. I was leaving some space in here free so I can build the next story. And really, that just means I need to leave this road free so I can build stuff on top of it. What I could do instead is if I shifted that around just a little bit, I think that would let me fit in an additional 2 factories in here. Yeah, that seems like a better use of space in there. The other thing that I noticed that's kind of a waste of space is this dirt excavator. Its location made sense when I started building it, but now that I look at it, I could fit another 8 storage piles in the place that it takes. So I'm wondering if there's a better place that I could stick this thing. Well, I do like it having close to power, and I'm imagining some of these storage bins are going to eventually hold dirt. Well, I'm thinking this pine tree forest over here, maybe I could just shift some of this stuff around. I think that'll do it. And I'm thinking I should be able to just run a power line underneath all of this. That should let me get power over that drill, because I think this right here is an existing power line. Yeah, I think that is going to work out just fine for us. And then we can just seal off everything over here with platforms. And now we've got a nice foundation on which we can build an additional run of storage. And in fact, we can start this first run being populated with dirt. Okay, overall, looking pretty good. I can see our building starting to come in. We're starting to get more smelters going. And really, one of the challenges we'll have going forward is continuing to get more ruins and scrap in here. That is something that I've still been saving up in the background for potentially affording a mine. I was eyeing this one for the longest time, but now that we've moved so much more industry over here, this is probably going to be the one to go for. You know, it's right there. We're going to have all this smelters right adjacent to it. It'll work perfect. Unfortunately, we're probably going to end up with a lot of injured beavers. That's the only downside I find with the mines and a lot of this heavy industry. In fact, you can see that our injured count has unfortunately slowly been going up. That is one of the big reasons I find to go bots. In a lot of ways, I kind of like regular beavers because their bonuses, when you stack their happiness bonuses high enough, they actually get performing really well. You just have to feed them, right? But on this map, we're small enough that we could have a single district cover everything, so it makes feeding them kind of not as difficult. So I'm not sure how much I'm going to lean into bots. We are in a drought though, and it's kind of a shame that we have such a full build queue, and otherwise I would take advantage of this time to kind of redo this dam. I think that's going to have to wait until a future drought though. I really do want to clear out the build queue that we've got. We're kind of getting to a snowball period, right? Like our industry is growing and that's helping our industry grow even faster. And it's just going to keep on going faster and faster from here on out. With all that settled though, let's go back to a little bit of time lapse and flush out the rest of this build queue. Everything is looking good and we're more or less done here. But you'll notice we've got a problem. If I look down at the workers of all these iron metal workshops, they're not doing anything. They're just sitting there. Unfortunately, we're quickly running out of scrap. In fact, as I look over the map, you can see all the scrap piles that we've been working on are more or less gone. So really, I need to start making use of these mines. And unfortunately, I made a big mistake here. This mine requires a lot of treated planks, and I forgot to pause the construction of the dirt excavator, and, well, I spent a lot of our treated planks on it. What I'm going to try to do, though, is start working on one for real. I want to get one going in here. This is very close to all these smelters, so it will help a lot. And in fact, we also have dynamite construction there, so we could use the efficient recipe. And I'm going to try to kick the can down the road a little bit, just by getting access to what ruins I can. Now, something I'm not 100% sure of ruins. I'm not sure if you can use ruins from above. So for example, this ruin, it's in the water. I actually don't know. I've never tested whether I can scavenge that from up here. This indication makes it look like a no. But otherwise, maybe I can kind of draw out stuff a little bit longer by running into these scrap piles too. They're relatively close. I can make a quick road over there. The good news is, as I cut out all these scrap too, it's kind of clearing the map later to make it easier for me to build. So it's not a complete waste to have all these scrappers around. Well, with most of the factory complete, let's go take a look to see how our other construction is doing. Well, a little bit of progress. I can see when I close this, the only thing I didn't put low priority was this solid tubeway, so they've slowly been making progress there. Plus, I can see a few more overhangs coming in. So now that we've kind of stopped hogging up all the steel over here, I think this part is going to start progressing a lot faster. And since we're starting construction in earnest here, it's probably worth carting in a few supplies. That is most of this done. And I think what I'm going to do, which is the most important thing really, is we need beavers. We need actual work crews in here. So I'm going to start putting breeding pods up here, because as soon as we do that, we're going to have more crews to start filling in all of our factory. So I can at least get these going, and then kind of in the background, more should be placed down. And we'll start with 5. I've got all sorts of space in here, and I can even continue to stack this vertically. But I don't want to jump up too quickly too fast and then ultimately burn out our food and water supply. With 5, that should boost us up to roughly 150 beavers, I think. In the time it took them to build this, we did finish up that season, and we entered into a drought. And unfortunately, that is hurting some of our production here. Luckily, thanks to that dome that we built here, this part of the industry is still going. Unfortunately, we just have kind of a worker shortage in some of these. As you can see, we have about 23 jobs still vacant. While they were building, you'll notice I also went down here and paused the efficient mine. And you're probably wondering, why am I doing that? Because that's one of the most important things that we need built. Well, I noticed there was a lot of thrash with the builders. Because what had happened is we need gears and treated planks. And we exhausted our stockpile of them. And so what was happening is the builders, because this was the most important thing, they would deliver one thing, then go off to the other construction on the map, and then another treated plank would arrive. And then they'd have to come all the way back here and deliver one. Just because of all that chaos, I was pausing it until we start building a stockpile of treated planks and gears again, and then I'm going to have the builders all come back at once and just rush build it. Based on the way things are going, I think we have enough scrap between these two piles on the left and the right that we should be able to get along until this mine is complete. Well, I managed to wait out the drought, and it was relatively uneventful. Right now, I'm really just starting to save up for those treated planks, as well as those gears, so I can finish that mine. But while doing that, I noticed something. Our water supply started to very slowly tick downward. And that's kind of an indication that we're right on the cusp of how much population our existing water tanks can support. I think given that I've added all these breeding pods and we're about to increase our population so much, we should probably put in some extra tanks and pumps. I think this deep supply over here would be fine. And I'll make sure to make those high priority so we've got beavers working on them. Because really, I think our limiting factor right now is still workers. We still have 18 vacancies, so we are inching upward. We just have a ton of children thanks to those new breeding pods. But with that taken care of, I think it looks like we rapidly reached all the supplies we need to finish our mine. I think really as we've started to get more workers, they've been filling up our factory, and our factory has just been snowballing faster and faster. So let's go ahead and get this going. Let's unpause this, and a bunch of builders should be able to just dump the remaining supplies in it really quickly. And before you know it, we've got our mine. Now, there's a couple things I'm a little worried with this mine. One is there's going to be injuries, so I have to keep an eye on how many injured beavers we've got. I have been continuing to put medical beds throughout our living district, so hopefully we'll be okay there. The other thing I'm a little bit worried about is flooding. I'm worried that at the start and end of a drought, there might be some splashback and it might injure some of these beavers. I'm going to start pushing water this way. I want kind of a buffer around that side. Well, that was the last big thing on our build queue. I know we still have a little bit of TNT here and there that needs to be laid down, but I think we're at a good stopping point for this episode. We managed to prepare a lot more land this episode. We've got our new breeding tower prepared to go, and we've significantly increased the size of our manufacturing. So from here, I think we've got a much better foundation to start tackling bigger projects. As always, I hope you enjoyed these episodes, and I hope to catch you next time.